They say your own voice is the one you know best, until you hear it echoing from somewhere you can't be. For Mark and Lisa, ordinary life in their cozy home takes a startling turn one evening when Mark hears his wife calling from the kitchen, even though she's fast asleep in their bedroom. As the nights wear on, this uncanny mimicry only grows bolder. Soon, Mark hears his own voice drifting through dark hallways, mocking his very existence. Tonight, we step into a house where the echoes of comfort twist into paralyzing dread. It started quietly enough. Late one evening, Mark was in the living room, half dozing in front of the TV, when he heard Lisa's voice float in from the kitchen. She called his name in that lilting tone he recognized instantly, a tone she used when she needed help reaching something high on a shelf. He paused the show, roused himself, and ambled toward the kitchen, expecting to find Lisa rummaging through a cabinet. Yet, when he arrived, the lights were off, the countertops untouched. Confused, he flicked on the overhead light. No one was there. A soft glow from the hallway illuminated their bedroom door. He found Lisa tucked beneath the covers, sound asleep. As he stood there, a tickle of unease settled in his gut. Maybe he had been half dreaming, or maybe the TV was to blame. Still, the voice had been so real. Too exhausted to dwell on it, Mark climbed into bed, telling himself to forget the incident. Sleep came in fitful bursts, peppered with odd dreams. He shrugged them off as byproducts of stress or too much coffee after dinner. If only he'd realized that night was just the prelude, a whisper of the darkness waiting to unfold. If you heard your loved one calling from another room, only to find them sound asleep, would you trust your senses or assume your mind played a trick on you? The next few days passed without incident, allowing Mark to nearly convince himself the midnight call had been a fluke. But on a crisp Sunday morning, as he brewed coffee before Lisa woke up, he heard her laughter ring out from the living room. Soft, playful. The kind of laugh she only shared when she found something genuinely amusing. Setting down his mug, he walked into the living room, empty again. The TV was off, the curtains drawn, and no trace of humor lingered in the air. A chill swept over him. The laughter had been so distinct, so unmistakably Lisa's. Yet here he was, alone. He stepped into the hallway, heart pounding faster with each step, only to find Lisa still asleep upstairs. He told her about the incident when she finally stirred, but she just frowned, half concerned and half bemused. "Maybe you're overworking," she offered. "Or maybe you just miss me so much. You're hearing my voice even when I'm not there." They both tried to laugh it off. Still, Mark couldn't shake the crawling unease. He found himself pausing at the threshold of each room, half expecting to catch his reflection speaking back at him. It felt like something intangible had wormed its way into their quiet routine, twisting familiar comforts into reasons for second-guessing his very perception. Nighttime soon became an hour of quiet dread. Mark found himself unusually alert after dusk, listening for footsteps or murmurs that shouldn't exist. He started noticing small, unsettling changes around the house. Doors that had been closed were found ajar, though Lisa insisted she hadn't opened them. His favorite coffee mug moved from the drying rack to the kitchen table without explanation. But the worst came one evening when he stepped out to take the trash to the curb. The porch light flickered, casting wobbly shadows across the lawn. As he turned, he heard his own voice drift from behind the front door, calm, casual, and eerily identical. "Hey Mark, hurry back in." He froze, goosebumps erupting along his arms. He stood in the cold for a solid minute, building the courage to re-enter. When he finally did, the living room was empty, silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator from the adjacent kitchen. Lisa emerged from upstairs, phone in hand, obviously startled by his expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, scanning the room as if expecting an intruder. All he could manage was a shaky denial, not ready to explain that he'd heard something wearing his own voice like a mask. If you discovered a presence was perfectly mimicking you, would you confront it head-on or keep it secret, hoping it would vanish on its own? Eventually, Lisa noticed Mark's mounting tension. Unable to keep everything bottled up, he recounted every disturbing incident, hearing her laughter, her call for help, even his own voice coaxing him back into the house. Lisa's face paled. She believed him. Her own experiences with the open doors and misplaced items were unsettling enough. They decided to take rational steps first: cameras. Mark set up a few motion-activated devices around the house, focusing on the kitchen, living room, and hallway. If anything physical moved around while they slept, they'd see it. If some unknown person had found a bizarre way to break in, they'd catch them on tape. Night after night, they reviewed hours of footage. Each morning, the cameras showed nothing. Occasionally, a flicker of static would ripple across the screen, or a shadow would dart past the frame. But no intruder, no sign of Mark or Lisa walking around outside their usual routine. The house, by all appearances, was eerily normal. Yet their sense of safety dwindled with each sunrise. They started hearing each other's voices at odd times, sometimes faintly humming from the guest room, or drifting from behind a closed door. It never escalated to anything violent, but the psychological toll gnawed at them both. Their once inviting home felt more like a labyrinth of illusions, each hall echoing with a twisted reflection of themselves. The tension culminated late one night when Lisa bolted upright in bed, convinced she'd heard Mark calling her name. Yet he lay beside her, fast asleep, stirred only by her jolt. Shaking him awake, she swore she heard him in the living room, his voice hurried and insistent. Mark felt his stomach twist into knots. He knew all too well that horrifying sense of hearing oneself from another room. They tiptoed downstairs, the hallway stretching out like a corridor in a bad dream. The living room lights flicked on at their approach. A shape stood at the window, human-like but lacking clear features, as though made of thick, shadowy mist. In a voice that sounded disturbingly like Mark's, it whispered, "Lisa." She clutched Mark's arm in terror. He fumbled for the light switch, heart hammering, and when illumination finally flooded the room, the figure dissolved. The curtains fluttered in a draft that Mark could have sworn hadn't existed seconds ago. The fear was so intense it rooted them both in place, breath frozen in their lungs. By now, it was clear something intelligent and malicious was toying with them. They needed help. They contemplated calling a priest, a paranormal investigator, anyone who might know how to evict an entity that wore their voices like masks. But the larger question gnawed at them. Why had it chosen their voices in the first place? Desperation drove them to act. With nowhere else to turn, Mark and Lisa reached out to an old friend, rumored to be well-versed in the supernatural. She arrived at dawn, her arms laden with tools, candles, salt, and a small mirror etched with strange symbols. Though both Mark and Lisa felt skeptical, they had no other recourse. Together, they walked through each room, sprinkling salt along window ledges and doorways. The friend muttered incantations under her breath, asking for protection and the banishment of false spirits. As they circled back to the living room, the air grew heavier, so charged it felt like a thunderstorm about to break. A faint humming, reminiscent of Mark's own voice, flickered in the corners. At the friend's instruction, they lit candles and turned off all the lights, plunging the house into a dim hush. The friend raised her mirror, scanning the room. The reflection of a shape, vague, pulsating, surfaced in its glass. It seemed to shift rapidly between Mark's outline and Lisa's silhouette, as if uncertain of which form to steal. With resolute calm, the friend pressed the mirror forward, chanting words that sounded ancient and forbidding. A gust of wind rattled the windows, and the thing in the mirror recoiled, twisting into a contorted blur. Then, in a rush of icy air, it vanished. The lights flickered back on, revealing nothing but trembling silence. Though the morning sun was just beginning to glow at the horizon, Mark and Lisa felt the night's terror fade. Their home, at last, was theirs again. Thank you for venturing into this tale of shifting shadows and stolen voices. If someone, or something, tried to mimic you or your loved ones, would you confront it in your own home or flee before it blurred the lines of identity? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if this haunting story resonated with your deepest fears, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to Dare to Listen. Because sometimes, the scariest echoes aren't the ones we hear in the distance, but those that speak in our very own voice. Get ready for a chilling tale of four friends whose seemingly ordinary road trip takes a very dark turn. But before we dive in, tell us in the comments, which country are you watching from? We'd love to know. It was supposed to be a fun road trip. 4 friends, endless highways, and the open desert stretching out before them. The kind of trip where you roll down the windows, blast music, and forget the world exists. Yet somewhere along the way, they got lost. The GPS had stopped working miles ago, the road signs had disappeared, and all that remained was an empty stretch of highway cutting through the Nevada desert. Ethan, gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white, muttered under his breath, "This doesn't make sense. We should have hit a town by now. Jessica, in the passenger seat, tapped her phone screen repeatedly. No signal. In the back seat, Melissa rubbed her eyes, a nervous tremor in her voice. Maybe we took a wrong turn, Ryan scoffed, attempting to lighten the mood. Or maybe Nevada just sucks. But then they saw it. A neon sign flickering weakly in the distance, barely visible against the dark. Silver Ridge Motel. Vacancy. It looked abandoned. The parking lot was empty. The building was worn, its paint peeling in long strips. The vacancy sign buzzed faintly, struggling to stay lit. Jessica frowned. This place looks sketchy as hell. Ethan sighed, exhaustion etched into his features. Yeah, well, unless you want to sleep in the car, we don't have a choice. Ryan stretched, yawning. Whatever. As long as there's a bed, I'm good. Melissa, however, shivered. She stared at the motel like it was staring back. Guys, I don't think we should stay here. Jessica nodded. Thank you. Finally, someone with common sense. But Ethan rubbed his face, his eyes bloodshot from hours of driving. We don't have enough gas to keep going. Let's just crash here for a few hours. Leave at sunrise. Jessica exhaled sharply, uneasy. I have a bad feeling about this. Ryan offered a casual grin. Jess, you always have a bad feeling about everything. This time, Jessica didn't answer. The wind howled through the empty desert, whistling through the cracks in the motel's sagging sign. They had no choice. They pulled into the lot. What do you think? Should they trust their instincts and leave, or try to get some sleep in this eerie motel? Stepping outside, the air felt wrong. No distant cars, no insects, just silence. An overwhelming sense of isolation pressed down on them. Inside, the motel smelled of dust and something stale, something long forgotten. The lights flickered overhead as they approached the front desk. Behind the counter stood an old man, thin, almost skeletal. His deep-set eyes locked onto them without blinking. His voice was low and raspy, sending a chill through the group. You kids need a room? Something about him felt off, but exhaustion won out. Ethan hesitated. Yeah. 2 rooms, please. The old man slid 2 keys across the counter, his fingers ice cold against Ethan's. Check out at dawn. Not a suggestion, a statement. Jessica's stomach twisted. Melissa whispered, "What does that mean?" The old man said nothing, and they didn't ask again. The rooms weren't much better. The wallpaper curled at the edges, revealing something dark beneath, and the mirrors were smudged, as though someone had pressed against them, watching. Melissa hugged herself. This place gives me the creeps. Ryan laughed, tossing his bag onto the bed. It's just old. Get over it. Jessica turned to Ethan, lowering her voice. I really think we should leave. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, weariness clouding his expression. Jess, we've been driving for hours. I can barely keep my eyes open. Jessica's jaw tightened. Then I'll drive. I don't care. This place isn't right. Ryan scoffed. Jesus, Jess, it's just a crappy motel. You're acting like we walked into a horror movie. Melissa glanced around, her voice trembling. I don't know, Ryan. It's weirdly empty, like it's been abandoned for years. Ethan exhaled. Let's just get some sleep. First thing in the morning, we're out of here. Jessica wanted to argue, but something told her it was already too late. That night, at 1:34 a.m., Jessica woke to the flicker of a TV turning on by itself. An old television in the corner hissed with static. Her stomach lurched. She fumbled for the remote, clicked it off. A tense silence followed until the bathroom door creaked open. Slowly, Jessica sat upright, pulse pounding. Melissa? No reply. The door swung wider in the darkness. Though the light was off,
She could feel something staring back from inside the bathroom. Then, the knocking started. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on their door. Jessica's heart slammed against her ribs. A moment later, the knocking moved down the hall. 1 door, then another. Knock, knock, knock. Melissa whispered, "Don't open it." Jessica nodded, gripping the sheets. Then, the doorknob twisted with a metallic groan, as though something was pushing to get in. Melissa covered her mouth, stifling a scream. Suddenly it stopped. A whisper slipped through the air. "Let us in." Jessica and Melissa were paralyzed, the air in the room thick and suffocating. Jessica glanced at her phone. No signal. Melissa whispered shakily, "Do you think it's Ethan and Ryan?" Jessica shook her head. "Number, they would have said something." Then came another sound, the creak of footsteps, but not from the hallway. It came from somewhere within their room. Melissa sucked in a breath. "Jess, don't turn around." Jessica turned anyway. Her gaze landed on the mirror, and there she saw it. A shadow, tall and unnaturally thin, standing behind them in the reflection. But when she whipped around to see the actual room, nothing was there. If you saw a shadow only in the reflection, would you try to confront it, or run like Jessica and Melissa? Terrified, Jessica grabbed Melissa's wrist. "We need to get to Ethan and Ryan's room, now." The hallway seemed different, longer and darker. The wallpaper was peeling in jagged strips, revealing what looked like black mold or something worse beneath. The flickering overhead lights cast warped shadows, as if the building itself were alive. Each step felt heavier, as though the carpet were holding onto their ankles. They reached Ethan and Ryan's room. Jessica knocked once, twice. No answer. She tried the handle. Locked. Melissa's voice shook. "Jess, what if they're not?" Jessica didn't let her finish. She banged on the door with her fist. "Ethan, Ryan, open up!" Silence. Then the door creaked open on its own, revealing a pitch-black interior. Jessica and Melissa hesitated in the doorway, hearts pounding. "Guys?" Jessica's voice echoed in the oppressive darkness. Flicking the light switch, Jessica squinted against the brief flicker of the bulb. The moment the room illuminated, a sick dread crept over her. The beds were empty, the sheets untouched, luggage gone. It was as if Ethan and Ryan had never been there at all. Melissa stumbled back. No, they were just here. Jessica's eyes darted around, searching for any sign of them. Her gaze landed on the mirror across from the beds, thick with dust. Undisturbed for decades, it seemed. Yet beneath the grime were distinct, fresh handprints, pressed from the inside, as if someone had been trying to break through the glass. Then, the TV flickered on, casting sporadic light across the room. Static hissed before revealing security footage of the motel's front desk, parking lot, and hallways. Jessica, Melissa, Ethan, and Ryan appeared, arriving earlier that night, then closing their room doors. After that, nothing. It was like they'd vanished. Melissa let out a sob. "Jessica, look." The footage changed, now showing Jessica and Melissa in this room, in real time, though there were no visible cameras. A wave of dread washed over them. They ran to the lobby, hearts pounding, only to find it empty. The guest book lay untouched under a thick layer of dust. Jessica spotted an old newspaper half buried beneath a fallen shelf. She pulled it free with shaking hands. The date, 1978. The headline, "Silver Ridge Motel burns to the ground. 4 travelers missing, never found." Melissa shook her head. "Number this can't be real." Jessica flipped the page, her eyes landing on a grainy photo of 4 missing travelers. Her vision blurred. It was them. Melissa, Jessica, Ethan, Ryan, 4 travelers who had checked in, but never checked out. A whisper caressed the air, sending chills down their spines. You were always part of the motel. Jessica and Melissa spun around. The old man from the desk stood there, his appearance hideously altered, skin rotting, eyes black pits, mouth warped into an impossibly wide grin. The motel groaned, walls peeling like dead skin, the floor cracking to reveal something dark and pulsing beneath. They felt a pull, as though icy hands gripped their backs, dragging them down. Melissa screamed, while Jessica fought to cling to anything solid. But the motel was swallowing them whole. The last thing Jessica saw was her own reflection in the dusty lobby mirror, trapped behind the glass, her eyes wild with terror as the motel erased their existence, as though they had never been there at all. What really happened to them that night? Were they ever meant to leave? Some places don't just take visitors, they keep them. If you enjoyed this chilling story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying tales. And let us know in the comments, what would you have done differently? Stay safe, and be careful where you stop for the night.
They say children have the keenest eyes for what lurks in the shadows, unburdened by the disbelief adults carry. For the Monroe family, bedtime once meant cuddles, stories, and sweet lullabies, until their youngest child, Lily, insisted something was living in her closet. At first, her parents dismissed it as a little girl's nightmare, a bad dream conjured by the creaks of an old house. But as nights passed, they began to sense a presence too. And one evening, with the closet door still wide open, they saw its shadow shift in the moonlight. For weeks, Lily's parents, Hannah and Robert, chalked up her tearful pleas to an overactive imagination. She refused to sleep without a nightlight, claiming she heard soft tapping sounds behind her closet door. Hannah recalled her own childhood nightmares, those fleeting terrors that vanished at sunrise. Surely, Lily would outgrow this phase too. But with each passing night, Lily's anxiety escalated. She'd dart from her room, crying about a dark figure peering from between her hanging dresses. She described its shape as tall, featureless, and unnervingly still. Robert tried reassuring her that no one was there, sweeping a flashlight across every shelf and nook. Nothing. Yet Lily's restless nights continued. One evening, Hannah tucked Lily into bed and left the closet door open as requested, hoping the extra light would soothe her. Around midnight, Lily's screams tore through the house. When Hannah rushed in, she found her daughter curled up at the foot of the bed, pointing a trembling finger at the open closet. "It's looking at me," Lily sobbed. If your child insisted something was lurking in their closet, would you trust their instincts or dismiss it, believing it's all in their head? As Hannah held Lily tight, she cast a wary glance toward the open door. A chill prickled her spine, hinting that maybe, just maybe, Lily's nightmares weren't entirely imagined. After that harrowing night, Hannah and Robert decided to take Lily's fears more seriously. They installed a brighter lamp and even rearranged the closet, hoping to dispel any ominous shadows. During the day, Lily seemed more at ease, laughing at cartoons and playing with her dolls. But come sundown, she grew tense and withdrawn, as though nightfall beckoned an unseen presence. That weekend, Hannah called in a handyman to check the closet's interior. Maybe loose floorboards or drafts were creating eerie effects. Nothing unusual turned up, yet Lily insisted the shadow sometimes flickered along the walls. Robert, ever the skeptic, placed a baby monitor in the room to capture any sounds during the night. The recordings offered faint clicks and muffled noises, but no clear explanation. One evening, Lily drew a crayon picture, a hulking black silhouette, featureless, looming near a small figure in bed. "It doesn't talk," she whispered, showing the drawing to Hannah. "It just watches." Faced with eerie evidence from a child, would you investigate every possibility for a real threat, or try to soothe them with reassurances and bedtime stories? Though shaken by Lily's drawing, Hannah and Robert tried to remain calm, each harboring the nagging thought that a child's imagination could be powerful. Still, they couldn't ignore how heavy the air felt at night, as if something lingered just beyond the corner of their vision. To reclaim a sense of normalcy, Hannah and Robert established a routine: dinner, a short family game, and reading Lily's favorite story before bed. The new schedule brought a semblance of peace, until Lily's whimpers began again, just past midnight. This time, however, her cries had a different quality, hushed terror, the kind that froze Hannah's heart in her chest. Hannah crept down the hallway to Lily's room, keeping lights off to avoid spooking her more. Through the crack in the door, she heard a faint, rhythmic sound, a scraping, almost like nails dragging along wood. Carefully peering inside, she saw Lily crouched against the headboard, eyes locked on the closet. And then Hannah's breath caught in her throat. Though the closet door stood wide open, a dark outline, taller than any coat inside, shifted along the back wall. For a fleeting second, it seemed to detach from the hangers, almost floating. With a rush of adrenaline, Hannah flicked on the overhead light. Instantly, the shape vanished. Lily collapsed into her mother's arms, sobbing. No longer able to dismiss her daughter's accounts, Hannah woke Robert. They conducted a thorough search of the closet, the hallway, even the attic above, but found nothing amiss. Yet Hannah knew what she saw. The emptiness of the closet left her with a single gnawing realization. Some nightmares were all too real.
Desperate for answers, Hannah quietly confided in her neighbor, Mrs. Collins, an elderly woman rumored to know much about local lore. Mrs. Collins listened intently, her wrinkled features growing thoughtful. She admitted she'd heard stories about that house. Nothing specific, just whispers of strange occurrences over the years. Dark corners invite dark things, she said with a grave nod. At Robert's urging, they tried more practical routes too. He set up a spare phone to record video in Lily's room overnight. The first evening captured little more than Lily's restless tossing and turning. On the second night, though, the footage showed the closet door slowly drifting, as though pushed by a breeze. Yet no windows were open, and the hallway stood still. More unnerving was a flicker of something black passing the camera's view, a fleeting shadow, gone in an instant. They played the clip back multiple times, their skepticism eroding. Lily watched in silence, as if her parents had finally discovered the truth she'd known all along. Even so, Hannah hesitated to label it as paranormal, clinging to the hope of a rational explanation. But rational or not, the presence in the closet felt unmistakable. Each night, the air around Lily's room grew heavier. Robert started to notice little chills on the back of his neck when he passed the doorway, a primal instinct warning him of danger he couldn't see. As the nights wore on, Lily's fear escalated into sheer terror. She refused to sleep alone, insisting the closet door be locked at all times. Yet every morning, it was cracked open again, no matter how tightly they secured it. The old house seemed to conspire with the shadow's movements, floorboards creaking in the dead of night, as if footsteps roamed the upstairs hall. One stormy evening, thunder rattled the windows, and Lily let out a shriek. Hannah and Robert raced to her room to find the closet door flung wide. The lamp flickered, revealing a shape that seemed to crouch just inside, a swirl of blackness that defied any clear form. Eyes wide, Lily pointed, and Hannah finally saw what haunted her daughter, an amorphous shadow that pulsed in the corner like a living silhouette. Robert lunged for the door to slam it shut, but he found it strangely resistant, like pushing against a powerful gust. With a burst of determination, he managed to close it. For a moment, the entire room felt stifling, the air crackling with tension. Then, just as quickly, the oppressive aura lifted. Hannah held Lily close, her mind racing. She realized that ignoring the phenomenon was no longer an option. Whatever lingered there was real, and it was growing bolder. Exhaustion and dread carved lines into her face as she and Robert resolved to find a way to force this lurking presence out once and for all. Determined to banish the entity, Hannah contacted a family friend with spiritual leanings, who suggested a simple cleansing ritual. Armed with sage and a few mumbled blessings, they approached Lily's closet. Lily clung to Robert's side, face pale but resolute. As Hannah lit the sage, an icy wind seemed to swirl from the closet's depths, buffeting the flame until it nearly died. Still, Hannah pressed on, waving the smoke around the threshold. As the room filled with fragrant fumes, a low groan reverberated from within the closet. Lily whimpered, and Robert placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. The door rattled, hinges squeaking, as if something inside fought to remain hidden. Gathering courage, Hannah pushed the closet door fully open, letting the light flood every corner. The shape began to manifest, a contorted shadow, trembling in the glare. Hannah recited words she barely understood, entreaties for peace and protection. The air grew thick, pressing on them from all sides. Then, with a jolt of finality, the shadow recoiled. It stretched unnaturally across the wall,
before retracting into the farthest corner and dissolving into darkness. An almost palpable sigh swept through the room. The rattling ceased, and for a moment the entire house felt lighter, as if released from a tight grip. Lily stepped forward, peering into the now empty closet. Though fear still lingered in her eyes, relief blossomed on her face. Whatever dwelled there was gone, or at least banished to a place where it could no longer harm them. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey into the Monroe household's darkest corners. Would you have confronted the shadow or locked the closet forever to keep its secret hidden? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story left you double-checking your own closet doors, remember to hit like, share, and subscribe to Dare to Listen for more tales that dare you to peek behind the veil of the ordinary. Because sometimes the things we dismiss as nightmares are already waiting in the open.